Welcome back to my channel. I just wanted to touch on a subject which people get very touchy about. See what I did there? Fasting. I like fasting. I feel it's a really important tool that I've learned how to do it well, and it's something that I've really embraced over the last 3 years. It was probably 3 years ago that I started to find out more about fasting, read Mindy Peltz's book, Fast Like a Girl. And ever since then, I've been hearing good stuff about fasting, all the good things. It's amazing. It heals the body. It's good for you to have a break from food and digestion, all in the one ear. And in the other ear, I've got fasting's bad for you. You shouldn't do it. Women shouldn't fast. It's not good for people at certain stages of their lives. And you've got this constant chatter going on. As with all things health related, it's good for you. No, it's not. It's bad for you. This has been proven. This has been disproven. And you have to try and cut through the chat and cut through the noise and figure out what works for you. What do you find helpful? And what do you want to do? And how are you guiding your ship? Because that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's what works for you. And fasting works for me. And I'm going to just outline briefly. This isn't going to be a long video. I'm just driving up from the border. I've just seen my horse down in Spain, and I'm driving back into Andorra, where I live. My name is Voysey, and I'm a health coach. And it's my mission to build a community of people on this channel, sharing my own experiences, which the transformational practices that I adopted to completely change my health trajectory from going that way quite steeply and sharply to now just going that way. Maybe that way. Depends which way you're looking at the screen. Look, I'm using the selfie camera, which means I'm back to front, which is very confusing. And fasting is one of those transformational practices that I adopted. I started intermittent fasting. So I started with just stretching, widening like the window in which I wasn't eating. And I've gone from that and not eating all the time. I used to eat all the time. I was either snacking, or I was eating a meal, or I was eating more snacks. I was so obsessed with food and so addicted to so many foods that it just ruled my life. And I've talked about this in other videos, completely addicted, and I didn't even realize it. Blood sugar levels off the scale, very high, too much of the time, metabolism all over the place. And the only way I controlled my weight was through exercise. And I started to worry when I got to things started to hurt more. I started to think, how on earth am I going to control my weight when I can't exercise like this anymore? It's just going to get dark now because we're just going into river, which is not the river. I'm going into, oh God, this is a bit tight. I'm going into the river, which is a hypermarket just up from the border, because I find in Andorra that you have to go to different places to buy different stuff. We don't have supermarkets like I was used to in the UK, like massive Tesco's where you can just go and buy everything. Here, I go to the butcher, and specific butchers for specific meats and other butchers for other meats. I go to this shop because they sell a particular brand of herbal teas, which I love, and they don't sell them anywhere else. This is like going into the haunted house in a fairground. My beepers don't like it. God, I don't even have a particularly big car. Imagine how the big Range Rover drivers are getting in here today. Oh, here we go. This looks a bit clearer now. So I'm going to River to get my favourite herbal teas. And but they don't sell the organic milk that I like, so I have to go somewhere else for that. And they don't have much in the way of organic vegetables, so I have to go somewhere else for those. So it's just, I feel like I spend half my life shop hopping to go and get all the things I need. Still, keeps life interesting. Back to the fasting. I adopted fasting as something I wanted to do. I started intermittent fasting. So I just reduced the hours, reduced my eating window. And then eventually I moved towards and it increased until I could do a 24-hour fast. But it was really hard work. This is going back 2.5 years because I wasn't fat adapted and I was still very much a sugar burner. I was still using sugar as my primary energy source rather than fat and protein, which I am now because I've changed the way I eat and I've changed the times when I eat. I've changed the type of food that I eat because last May I joined Candy Fraser's Primal Bod program and there is fasting in her program. I read through the protocol at the beginning and thought, God, that's going to be hard work. Here she's talking about once a week doing a 24-hour fast. Oh, I hate 24-hour fasts because I really had to white knuckle it. Before I was fat adapted, when I was still very much a sugar burner, because that's what most of us are. We rely on carbohydrates for our primary energy source, and it means that the body uses those first, and you have to taper off and stop eating the sugars, stop storing the big amounts of glucose in your muscles, and gradually you switch over to becoming a fat burner if you eat and prioritize protein as your main energy source, which I now do. I still eat some vegetables and I still have a bit of sugar, but it's very different to how I used to eat. And because of that, I'm no longer a food addict. I'm no longer controlled by foods. And I tell you what, that is an incredible feeling when you've been controlled by food all your life. And what they say is it's not the food that's controlling you, but it's your microbes, because your internal microfauna, your microbial balance, the garden of friendly bacteria and unfriendly bacteria that live inside us. They live in this perfect balance, and the good bacteria keep the bad bacteria in check. However, if the bad bacteria start to flourish and become more abundant than they should be, and the good bacteria get pushed back, because we are filled with bacteria. It's all over the outside of us and it's all over the inside of us. We have more bacterial cells than we have human cells. They are separate creatures. We live symbiotically alongside each other. There's us and the human cells, and then we've got this massive microbial, hopefully massive microbial garden of abundant, good flora and fauna inside of us. But if you eat too many processed foods, too many chemicals, you consume too much ultra processed crap, you have too many courses of antibiotics and other medications, you kill off species, you kill off whole strains of bacteria. Some of them never come back again. And this goes on over years, and your body copes and you manage, because our bodies are amazing and they're always trying to keep us alive and trying to operate optimally. But you get to a point, like I did around 50, where things just start going wrong because you can't cope anymore. You've got to such a point that things start to fail, and that's where disease and illness is set in. Hey, people will say to me, yeah, but I've eaten like this all my life and it's never caused me a problem before. That's because previously your body was able to cope with what you were throwing at it because it was younger and fitter and stronger. But as we age, we become less able to cope. And then the illnesses set in, and then the pains come, and the diseases, and the joint aches, and the inability to sleep properly, and the lack of energy and the exhaustion. Apparently, that's the most common thing that doctors, GPs hear from people is what is it? TATT. They come in and they write TATT. Tired all the time. That's the most common complaint. People are absolutely exhausted because your whole body is exhausted from years and years of firefighting and trying to keep things up at 100%, trying to stay strong whilst you put the wrong fuel into yourself. You treat your body like a bin. I certainly did. I thought I was healthy, but there was so much unhealthy about what I was eating as well. So discovering fasting for me was an amazing tool because it gave my body some downtime. And once I started doing it correctly and not white knuckling it through, and started nourishing myself so that I was gradually becoming less reliant on sugar, more reliant on fats and proteins, until my body made the switch and my blood sugar levels calmed down and came back to steady and normal. This process took a while. It doesn't happen overnight, but the changes do happen quickly. You start to see changes within days and then more changes within weeks and even more incredible changes within months. Imagine after 5 years of eating an optimum diet and exercising, moving correctly for your body and not over exercising, not doing things too intensely. Imagine the improvements that just go on. And that's where you get the kind of reverse aging effect of the way that I now live my life, in that you just stop aging and everything goes back to working how it should. You feel amazing because everything's working again. All the aches and pains have disappeared. All the lack of energy's gone. I feel so happy all the time. I laugh more. That's amazing, isn't it? And so here I am at 56. And this is why, for me, fasting, it works. I do obviously understand, because I've learned all this stuff through my health coaching training and also through the training I did joining up with Candy's course, which was like doing a college course. There was so much learning in that. I've learned that, and from Mindy Pelz, continues to teach me, because she has an amazing channel stuffed with information and she has millions of followers on her YouTube channel. And I've learned that when you do still have a menstrual cycle, you have to honor your menstrual cycle, because at different times of the month, your hormones are doing different things. Different hormones are dominant depending on whether you've just finished your period or whether you're ovulating or whether you're just approaching your next period, the end of the cycle. So absolutely, women have to fast differently from men. But when you become postmenopausal, you are more like a man. You don't have a cycle anymore. So therefore, you're not affected. So I can fast anytime. And I tend to do it once a week. I tend to stop eating after a big lunch or late lunch on a Sunday. I try to stop eating every day before 5 o'clock, but sometimes it's a little bit later. And then I fast through Monday. Some people prefer to eat a good breakfast, eat a really good nourishing breakfast, and then stop eating. And that was how I learned to do my 24-hour fasts. I did them with the eat a big breakfast and then stop. And when the first few you do are really tough, because by tea time, you're pretty flipping hungry. You really want to eat something. But it's all to do then with, you have a ketone monitor, you do blood tests to check your ketone levels. And when you are deep into a fast, you start to make more ketones. Your brain's using ketones for energy rather than immediate sugars, because you've used up all your sugar stores by this stage. And that happens from about, different people again, different times. For me, that happens from about 17 hours, 20 hours onwards. My ketone levels start to climb. But mine don't get particularly high because I haven't got a lot of spare body fat anymore. I'm pretty lean. I had a good 20, 25 pounds of fat that I was carting around that I really shouldn't have been, but that's the way things had gone for me in my early 50s. And I've now rid myself of that body fat. Oh, here we are on a terrifying Andorran roundabout. Oh, it's like wacky races. There we go. Got around safely. I don't think roundabouts have been part of Andorran highway life for very long. And certainly that the way to negotiate roundabouts is actually taught differently when you are learning to drive in Andorra. That makes them, for people who come from the UK like me, quite terrified, because people will be on your outside and you're going straight on the inside lane and they're coming around on the outside lane and coming right in front of you to turn left, which is really disconcerting. Anyway, I'm used to it now. So you just assume everybody's going to turn left and then you don't broadside them. And so far, fingers crossed, I haven't done that yet, but I'm always expecting somebody to do it to me. Yes, so fasting has become a really useful tool. I use it every week. This week I finished a fast yesterday, it was about 45 hours 45, 48. And it wasn't quite 2 days. It was just under 2 days. But what I find when I go into a longer fast, I find the first 20 hours is hard. And then if I can go to bed and not eat anything and then wake up next day and I either have black coffee or I have coffee with just some fat in it, because a bit of fat doesn't break you out of a fasted state. It doesn't make your blood sugar rise. That's the trick. And they call that dirty fasting. And I love a dirty fast. I will take that any day over a clean fast because I do like to have something, and black coffee doesn't really do it for me. So I'll blend butter into my coffee and that'll get me through a fast. Or I'll make a really rich, fatty meat stock and I'll strain it and I'll just drink the juice and have some of that. I make sauerkraut, and just the juice from sauerkraut or kimchi or just a couple of teaspoons of kefir, as our American cousins call it. That will give your microbes, your friendly bacteria, something to eat. And that kind of takes away the grinding need to eat something. So it's those microbes, those bad microbes, the sugar-loving microbes that are disrupting your biology, that are disrupting you internally and suppressing your good microbes and taking over and getting into places in your body where they should never be. They should never have flourished out of your large intestine, but they climb up the intestine, they get into the small intestine, then they get into your stomach, and then you've got dysbiosis with SIBO and SIFO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth and small intestinal fungal overgrowth, and they get even higher. They get in all the places. And then if you've got a leaky gut, where the gut junctions aren't tight anymore because of all the terrible foods you've been shoving into your body, which you've been treating like a bin, then they're into your bloodstream. And then once they're in the bloodstream, they can proliferate everywhere. So then you get pains in your joints and you get microbes being in places. They are the things that are demanding that you eat the sugars, because that's what their favorite food is: sugar in all of its forms, whether it's M&Ms, whether it's fruit, which is full of sugar, even though it's natural, whether it's pasta, which turns into sugar in your body, whether it's bread. They are demanding that you eat those things. That's why those foods are so flipping addictive. They are addictive because our microbes demand that we eat them. And people with addictions, like I used to have, get very angry when you tell them that ideally you want to stop eating that sort of food because it's causing you all these other problems. They don't want to hear it. And until people want to hear that, I can't help them. People have to want to be able to help themselves. But if you want to help yourself, then there are ways and means to get yourself off food addictions. And fasting becomes a really amazing, useful tool, because you're literally starving out those little buggers. You're starving them. That you give them nothing to eat, they're going to die. Some of the good ones will die too, but you get rid of the bad ones. You promote the good ones by feeding them the stuff they like, which is the fermented foods. And then you get your body back in this wonderful balance, and then things start to heal. And you give your body downtime when you're fasting. It's not having to do that massive job of digesting your food often. So therefore, it can work on other stuff like healing you, making you better from things that have ailed you sometimes for years and years. And the other thing that happens when you do longer fasting, which is all part of the healing process, is autophagy. That amazing word, which I only learned a couple of years ago. Autophagy, self-eating. Your body literally eats all the dead and dying cells when there's no food coming in through the front door. So the food's disappeared. So it starts doing a cleanup, massive cleanup job instead, and cleaning up loose skin, wrinkles, cancerous cells, things which you don't need, fat, cellulite, stuff which the stubborn fat you can never get rid of no matter how much you diet. That's what fasting has done for me, and that's why I think fasting is amazing. When you think about it, fasting has been part of human practices. It's been something that humans have done since time immemorial. Since we crawled out of the primordial swamp, since we were early humans, fasting would have been something that we had to do. It wouldn't have been a choice. It was, you fasted when there was nothing to eat. And if you didn't catch something to eat it, then you would have to fast because you had no other choice. And one of the things that is leveled against fasting, one of the things I regularly hear is that it weakens you and it will waste your muscles. And whilst obviously that would happen if you fasted too regularly and didn't feast in between and you were under eating anyway, and then you did prolonged fasts, yes, obviously you're going to waste muscle. But if you're just talking about a 1, 2 or 3 day fast, which you're using for health purposes, and you're using it to get deep into that healing state, you aren't wasting muscle. Because when early man didn't find something to kill with his limited resources of his spear and his rock or whatever he was going to use to kill the next animal to have his next feast, if he got weak and depleted so much that his muscles started wasting away, how was he ever going to catch anything? The human race would have died out. So that is one of my big bugbears with one of the things that's used to shoot down fasting, shoot it down in flames, is this thing about it makes you weak and it weakens your muscles. That can't be, can it, if we think about it sensibly? And also, it's been part of so many different religions around the world. So many people incorporate fasting as something that they do as a religious practice, as a cleansing practice. And they've done it for millennia. And again, it doesn't do people any harm to have a break from eating from time to time. It really doesn't. It doesn't hurt us. And yet people will absolutely stand by their resolve on this and their belief that we should be used to eat all the time. It's very difficult when your body is used to food coming in grazing like a cow, like a ruminant animal, like a grazing animal you eat all the time, when humans didn't actually evolve eating like that. And we only have one stomach, and you have to put the food into that stomach and then allow your body to process out what you put in there before you start eating again. Because if you start to eat and you haven't finished digesting what's in your stomach, everything stops and has to wait for the last bite that you just put in to get to the same state as the rest of it before digestion can carry on, because the food doesn't leave your stomach until it's all in a liquid form, because it leaves the stomach and it drips through to the next level. It doesn't drip through as chunks of chicken nuggets or energy bars. It trickles through as liquid. Now, that isn't going to happen if there's chunks of food going in at the top end. So that's also why you should chew your food really well. If you chew your food mindfully, eat mindfully, pay attention to what you're eating, look at what's on the plate, don't be looking at your phone, and your digestion will go a lot better. And I will continue to do it. And I love it. And I feel that don't slam it. Until you've tried it. Try it first before you write it off and say it's a terrible thing and it's bad for us, because believe you me, it was part of my life-changing transformation. And on that note, I will say cheerio and thank you for watching. And please do subscribe, and I will see you on my next video. Bye for now.